For decades, owning a Louis Vuitton product meant something very specific. It signaled distance from ordinary consumer culture. The brand represented old-world prestige, elite travel, inherited wealth, and access to a social category that most people could observe but never fully enter. Louis Vuitton luggage once moved through private terminals, luxury trains, yachts, and upper-class European circles where status was communicated quietly through craftsmanship and scarcity rather than obvious logos. The company was not built to serve mass aspiration. It was built to serve the illusion of unreachable sophistication, and then something changed. Today, Louis Vuitton remains one of the largest luxury brands on earth, generating enormous revenue and dominating global fashion culture. Yet at the same time, many wealthy consumers quietly stopped viewing it as truly exclusive. The brand still looks luxurious to the broader public, but inside elite circles, Louis Vuitton increasingly became associated with visibility rather than rarity, mainstream recognition rather than private distinction, and mass aspiration rather than quiet status. This is the paradox at the center of modern luxury capitalism because Louis Vuitton did not collapse financially. In fact, the company became more commercially powerful than ever, but the very strategy that transformed it into a global empire may have also weakened the thing luxury depends on most: social separation, because luxury becomes extremely fragile the moment too many people can participate in it. The story of Louis Vuitton is not really about fashion. It is about what happens when a status symbol becomes too successful at scaling desire. And once you understand how that process works, you begin to realize that many luxury brands are secretly trapped inside the same dangerous cycle. At the heart of luxury exists a contradiction that almost no company can solve permanently. Brands want growth because investors demand expansion, rising revenue, and global dominance. But luxury itself depends on restriction, scarcity, and controlled access. The more consumers who enter the system, the weaker the symbolic power often becomes. Prestige relies on social distance. Once the distance disappears, the psychology changes completely. For most of its history, Louis Vuitton managed this balance brilliantly. The company built its reputation through craftsmanship, travel culture, and heritage associated with European aristocracy and upper-class mobility. Long before fashion logos covered social media feeds, Louis Vuitton trunks were symbols of elite movement through the world. The products represented sophistication rather than visibility. They were expensive, but more importantly, they felt socially elevated. Then globalization transformed luxury forever, as emerging economies created millions of new affluent consumers during the late 20th and early 21st century. Luxury brands realized something financially irresistible. Status aspiration could scale globally. Suddenly, wealthy consumers in Asia, the Middle East, Eastern Europe, and rapidly growing urban centers all wanted access to the same Western prestige symbols historically associated with old money Europe and American elite culture. Luxury stopped being local. It became industrialized aspiration, and few companies benefited from this transformation more aggressively than Louis Vuitton. The brand expanded internationally at extraordinary speed. Stores appeared in every major luxury district around the world. The iconic monogram became instantly recognizable across continents. Marketing campaigns flooded celebrity culture, fashion media, airports, and high-end retail spaces. Louis Vuitton evolved from an elite heritage brand into something much larger, a global status language understood almost everywhere on Earth. Financially, the strategy was genius. Psychologically, it was much more complicated because the monogram itself became too visible. This is where the economics of status begin behaving in deeply irrational ways. Ordinary consumers often assume that widespread popularity strengthens luxury because it increases recognition. But among the wealthy, excessive visibility can quietly destroy the emotional value of a status symbol. Once too many people own the same recognizable product, the product stops functioning as effective social separation. And separation is the true engine behind elite consumption. This is why many ultra-wealthy individuals eventually move away from heavily branded luxury and toward quieter forms of wealth signaling. Once logos become mainstream aspiration symbols, they lose some of their power inside elite environments. A product that once communicated exclusivity begins communicating accessibility. Louis Vuitton's monogram became one of the most overexposed luxury symbols in modern history. At first, that visibility looked like domination. Celebrities celebrities carried the bags everywhere. Music videos embedded the brand into hip-hop culture. Influencers turned Louis Vuitton into social media currency. Airports became oceans of monogram canvas. Millions of consumers viewed ownership as proof of success because the logo itself carried enormous cultural recognition. But underneath that success, something subtle was happening. The wealthy were evolving, and elite signaling was becoming quieter. This shift accelerated dramatically during the digital era because social media changed how luxury operates psychologically. Before Instagram, wealth signaling occurred inside relatively controlled physical environments. High-end restaurants, business meetings, private clubs, fashion circles. But once social media turned luxury into constant public performance, visible logos started losing sophistication among upper-tier consumers. Because when everyone performs luxury publicly, obvious luxury stops feeling exclusive. The internet democratized aspiration so effectively that traditional status symbols became oversaturated almost overnight. Millions of middle-class consumers saved for entry-level luxury products specifically because those products were recognizable online. This created an uncomfortable problem for heritage brands like Louis Vuitton. The products still generated massive demand, but the demand itself slowly weakened exclusivity, and this is where the story becomes almost ironic because Louis Vuitton succeeded too well at becoming culturally universal. The company mastered aspirational branding at a scale few businesses in history have ever achieved, but luxury prestige often depends on remaining slightly inaccessible, slightly mysterious, slightly detached from mass participation. Louis Vuitton moved closer to mass culture instead. The collaboration era intensified this transformation even further. Partnerships with streetwear brands, artists, musicians, and pop culture figures dramatically expanded the company's relevance among younger consumers. Collaborations generated enormous hype and extraordinary profits. They also blurred the line between elite luxury and mainstream cultural consumption. Suddenly, Louis Vuitton was no longer simply associated with inherited wealth or European sophistication. It became deeply embedded in internet culture, celebrity culture, influencer culture, and modern consumer spectacle. Again, financially, this was incredibly effective, but elite psychology does not always reward financial success. In fact, many wealthy consumers intentionally avoid products that feel too visible, too popular, or too socially obvious. Once a luxury product becomes heavily associated with public flex culture, some upper-tier buyers quietly migrate elsewhere in search of subtler status signals. And this is the hidden cycle that constantly reshapes elite consumption. The wealthy rarely want the same thing forever. They want what fewer people can access next. As Louis Vuitton expanded globally, ultra-high net worth consumers increasingly shifted toward quieter luxury categories where recognition became more coded and less public. Discreet tailoring, rare independent watchmakers, invitation-only products, understated brands recognized mainly within elite circles. In many ways, visible logos themselves started becoming associated with aspirational wealth rather than established wealth. That distinction matters enormously because status signaling evolves in layers. Products that symbolize success for the middle class often lose symbolic value among higher status groups precisely because they became aspirational mass symbols. Once everyone recognizes the signal, elites seek new forms of differentiation. Louis Vuitton became trapped inside that dynamic. The company could either protect extreme exclusivity and limit scale, or maximize global growth and accept some erosion of prestige among elite consumers. From a business perspective, the decision was obvious. Global luxury conglomerates answer to investors, expansion targets, and shareholder expectations. Remaining culturally small may protect prestige, but it limits revenue dramatically. So Louis Vuitton chose scale, and scale changed the psychology of the brand forever. Today, the company still possesses enormous cultural power. Its products remain expensive, desirable, and globally recognized. Millions still view Louis Vuitton ownership as luxury achievement, but true exclusivity functions differently now because elite consumers increasingly separate visible luxury from private luxury. Visible luxury impresses the public, private luxury impresses other elites. That is a completely different game, and perhaps the most fascinating part of this story is that Louis Vuitton itself understands the problem. In recent years, many luxury houses have attempted to move back upward through ultra-premium products, private client experiences, limited collections, and high jewelry categories designed specifically for top-tier wealth circles. The goal is not merely selling products anymore, it is rebuilding distance, because distance creates desire. And once a luxury brand becomes too culturally available, rebuilding mystique becomes extraordinarily difficult. result. People often assume luxury is about price. It is not. Real luxury has always been about controlled participation. The moment participation scales too aggressively, the emotional architecture starts weakening. Consumers may continue purchasing the products, but the symbolic meaning changes. Louis Vuitton did not lose exclusivity because the products became cheaper. It lost exclusivity because the logo became socially overexposed. And in elite psychology, overexposure quietly transforms prestige into familiarity. That may sound irrational, but modern status systems have always operated irrationally. Human beings constantly search for social distinction, and once a symbol becomes too widely understood, high-status groups begin abandoning it in search of new forms of separation, which means the greatest threat to luxury is often not failure, it is popularity. Because the moment everyone wants the same symbol, truly elite consumers stop wanting to be associated with everyone.